Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another 21st Century Renaissance and another open interest newsletter breakdown on GameStop. I'm your host, Dr. Michael LoPiano, and we are looking at the start of an exciting week, right? We've got the White House tweeting about GameStop, which is pretty incredible. And yeah, we're looking at some pretty cool data telling us some things I think we've long been waiting for some confirmation on with respect to interest rate swaps. So we're going to talk about some of that today. When we get to our GameStop discussion, we will go ahead and start with our discussion, however, from the Bible, right? And we will take a look here at the ending of the life of Noah. So we've been taking a look at this episode from the life of Noah, this account really of a second creation or a recreation, a restoration of the world. In essence, this is something of a renaissance for the world. It is a rebirth of the world, something like it's like a starting over, but something is conserved, right? It isn't a total deletion of the world, but a preservation of much of life and a deletion of much that has gone wrong with it, much that has strayed from its creative purpose, much that has strayed from the natural order of creation and God's design for it. So let's take a look here at this declension of the life of Noah here. Let's make this a little bigger. There we go. And the sons of Noah that went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham is the father of Canaan, or Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Canaan shall be his servant. Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So some interesting details here, right? So first, we have the core episode, and then we have some details that we get that appear right from the variation here of the story, very clearly appear to be part of an editorial tradition based on sort of what comes afterwards. I mean, it's not necessarily that Noah did not say these things, but it seems to be that perhaps there are variants of the stories that contain something like this curse, this sort of prophecy. And it remained particularly salient, or it was packaged in this way to be featured so prominently in this particular recorded version of the story because of events that come afterwards. Something like that. That's taking a little critical approach to it there. But in any case, let's take a look at what the story tells us. Number one is we get this ending of the life of Noah. So Noah, he's done with the ark, and he has three sons, and it's his sons who are going to go and we're told repopulate the earth. It's very interesting how even ancient commentators interpreted this. Japheth, in particular, was seen by Philoeudius as being the ancestor of the Greeks, right? Because of the Greek flood myth. I think we've mentioned this of Deucalion, which is recorded most notably in Ovid's Metamorphoses. So Philoeudius, who is a pre-Christian, a pre-time of Christ Jew, working with the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, aligns these two traditions and says, well, this is right. The sons of Noah go and populate the earth, and Japheth goes over and is an ancestor to the Greeks, and then of course Shem ends up being right as regarded as an ancestor to the Hebrews. which is where we get this term Semite, Semitic peoples. So Shem is the ancestor of the Egyptians, the Jews, the Arabs, even the Ethiopians, right? Anyone who speaks a Semitic language, so Amharic in Ethiopia, Old Coptic in Egypt, Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, which is, of course, modern Hebrew is a recreation of this ancient Hebrew language, Arabic, Syriac, Aramaic, Babylonian, right? So all of these types of civilizations. So this is Shem, and then Ham, right? And so Ham ends up with this curse from his father because Noah, one of the things that he figures out how to do, right, he becomes a husbandman. So that's his husbandman is like a shepherd, but he's especially expert in what we might call selective breeding, or in other terms, using Greek words, eugenics. This is figuring out how to bring forth more advantageous progeny from the careful selection and crossing of, let's say, bloodlines, right? The selection of the genome or of good specimens of animals, such that future generations or animals have certain traits that are selected for and certain ones that are not. So, right, species have a number of the ability to do this to themselves. Like, human beings, we do this to ourselves. We do this unconsciously. We do this in some conscious ways, some unconscious ways. And culture also can play a factor in this. But of course, animal husbandry, being a husbandman, is about doing this consciously to particular species so that you can produce better animals, right? In fact, that's how we, let's say animals more suited to the values and designs of those who are breeding them. So we do this, for example. We have done this. This is how we got cows. This is how we got sheep. This is how we got goats. Basically, every domesticated animal, dogs, cats. This is how we did this. Cats, though, maybe not fully intentionally. Cats, I think, may have allowed themselves to be domesticated. Cats are an interesting story, but yeah, cows very much so. Dogs very much so. Dog breeding, for example, is an example of it. In any case, this is what Noah decides to become. This is what he becomes. And he also figures out viticulture. In the biblical tradition, it is Noah who is the father of viticulture. He plants a vineyard, also invents wine, becomes drunk. Oops. Figures that out, right? And then his son, Ham, sees him in his nakedness. But his other two sons, Shem and Japheth, right? They do not. They purposefully shield themselves from seeing their father in their nakedness. And as a result, not Ham, but Ham's descendants are cursed via his son Canaan or Canaan. And there are a couple elements to this, right? So one of them says that he will be the servant of servants to the descendants of Shem and Japheth. To the descendants of Shem and Japheth. Japheth will, of course, be very prosperous, but will dwell in the tents of the sons of Shem. So this is something like tradition. This is usually interpreted as, all right, where there are the three corners of the world. There's Europa, which falls to Japheth. There is Shem. Asia falls to Shem, and then Africa falls to Ham. And so Ham ends up cursed, and his son Canaan, who inhabits the land that's now known, as will become known as the land of Israel, the Holy Land. This will become in many ways a cursed land, but it is one that will serve the sons of Shem and Japheth in a certain sense. So I mean, this isn't specifically gestured to directly here in this chapter, but the interpretative tradition does largely pair these things. So it's something, right, like, because Ham witnesses his father in this state of vulnerability, his descendants, his son Canaan, will bring this introduction of, as we'll see, will recur right throughout the Bible, brings these pagan gods, these dark gods, into the world. So it is through Canaan that the Canaanite gods come into being, And these are the fathers of the Greek gods, right? The Greek gods themselves end up something of around, I think, the 9th century BC. The names of the Canaanite gods get mixed with the names of the Greek gods. The Greeks end up receiving quite a lot of actual culture from the Canaanites, from like the Phoenicians and such, the city-states of Canaan. But these gods will also be a torment to Israel, as well as in many ways to the Canaanites themselves. So this is a step that comes. But really, okay, what's really kind of the main idea here, the main structural idea that's being presented is this is meant for you to keep this in mind going forward, right? The name of Canaan, should be associated with a curse. And as we see from the Bible, curses matter. Curses matter a lot, especially to descendants. So we've seen this, right, with Cain, the curse of Cain, which then multiplies down to the generation of his descendant Lamech. And it is the line of Cain, the legacy of Cain, the inheritance and multiplication of this curse that culminates in this way of life, this polygonic way of life, this violent way of life, this life of vendetta and vengeance. And as a result, the legacy of Cain is cleansed from the earth in an all-encompassing flood. That is something that the Bible presents, the book of Genesis presents. Okay. In the same manner, the book of Genesis says, okay, right, we just got done with all this curse stuff. Immediately upon the creation of the earth, new curse for Canaan. New curse for the sons of Ham. Okay. So when this term comes up, when Canaan comes up, the Bible is basically saying every time you see this term come up now, you must associate this with a generational curse. So what the Bible says is, okay, in specific cases, generational curses matter, but also in general cases, generational curses matter. Don't do things. I mean, right, it doesn't say don't do them, but right, it presents this to you where you can kind of make up your own mind whether you would like to engage in the type of activities that bring about generational curses. And this more or less may surround activities that are perhaps seemingly innocuous. There's something maybe kind of obviously not quite right about them. Yeah, Ham takes a look at his dad being drunk and naked. Try to avoid that, right? Try to avoid, what would you say? Try to avoid bearing witness to undermining the dignity of your father, something like that. I mean, number one, fathers don't do things to compromise your dignity by getting drunk and falling asleep naked in your tent so your sons see you in such a state, right? Because one of your grandsons ends up cursed forever, so things like this to consider. So this is a reiteration of this concept, right? A reinforcement that this was not just something in the past, but this natural principle remains the case in the reborn world, in the world post-Novi, the post-Diluvian world. So don't do these things, right? Don't do things to compromise your, like if you are a father, do not do things that will compromise your dignity. Don't do these things, right? Don't do things that will put your children in these weird situations. Don't do this, or you may end up being the cause, right? Because it's Noah who ends up being the source of the curse for his grandson, Canaan. Oops. This is kind of the first time we see Noah doing this kind of thing. So, all right, he tries a new thing. He discovers wine. Instantly, it causes him to bring generational curses upon his own children. That's the first thing that wine does. That's the first thing that wine does, or that human beings do after having consumed wine, interestingly. But at the same time, right, try to avoid bearing witness to the sorts of behavior that I suppose will undermine the dignity of your father. To have, let's say, to have the dignity of one's own father undermined is equivalent to being, what would you say? To being cursed intergenerationally, something like that. Yeah. Not awesome, not awesome. But the book of Genesis makes a claim, and it says, like, consider this. So it's something for us to consider as we engage in certain behavior. It's something for us to consider, right? As we consider that, once again, right, the actions of our lives are not only things that affect us, not only things that affect other people in the world now, but have this potential to then go on and, essentially multiply and either curse or bless our descendants. So that that lies with us. That lies with our actions. Whether our descendants are blessed or cursed is determinant upon our actions in this life. So things to consider. Let's go on and take a look at what hopefully will turn out to be an intergenerational blessing for many of us, and that is GameStop. That is our favorite stonk here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got going on for today. Already, right, we're kind of starting to cool off a bit from some of this hype connected to to the president's tweet. We'll take a look at that. I would like this to be shown. Yes. So big thanks go out once again to Dude McStud today for sponsoring today's article and video breakdown, as well as to our monthly supporters, Not Medical Advice, Kurt Lusko, Cosmotropic, Dayswag 52, Cameron D. Leon, Drew Krantz, and Hey Luckies, aka Faithless Looter. This was really cool to see after hours. Obviously, we got this we got a super duper pump up here, right up to what, 25, almost 25 and a half, 25, like 30 or something like that. What were we exactly? 25, 27 is what I get for that after hours high there. Yeah, pretty cool. Not bad after seeing some super duper fun time price action, I guess, on Thursday, something of the sort. Right, so my guess maybe going into Wednesday, right, we hit this low, very low, below the cash floor, before then having a big recovery day on Thursday, and then kind of petering out into Friday, closing at 23.30. Largely what we figured would happen. I mean, did I think we would go below cash floor? No, I did not think we'd go below whatever that 22.63, which that is something like equivalent to that's something like what book value should be, right? That level of market cap is like equivalent to book value. Not factoring in growth or future sales or anything at all. Right, but then this tells us something very important. This tells us something that we've been thinking of, I think, for a while now, and that is that GameStop is likely hedged against interest rate swaps. So against changes in the U.S. interest rate. And there are swaps going into, I would say, right, what would be, seems like the CPI print ahead of potential cut periods. So we did have price action that looked very, very similar to this last year, cuts of which resulted in very, very substantial, very strong upward volatility and bullishness in GameStop price action. So basically this pattern, this kind of steady descent over a period of quite a few days, did look like it was the type of suppression into a major swap roll, right? A number of folks have been talking about this. Richard Newton, of course, very notably pointed this out with respect to his swap theories. But then, right, something else, right? This didn't quite line up with some of these dates that we've seen on these pink, yellow, and red stars. But rather, as we talked about last week, right, that this may line up exactly with our bottoming going into basically last year's October period, that it is possible that institutions somehow entered into something like an interest rate swap ahead of FOMC, ahead of October CPI print last year, and that the effects of this price action is price action suppression in order to go ahead and roll that position, of course, ahead of CPI and ahead of FOMC. Now, CPI was good, still went up. We're 3%, I think, annualized for September. However, it was lower than expected. So this more or less cements the fact that we will get a cut this Wednesday, which also happens to be National Cat Day. Happens to be National Cat Day, the very famous cat day that Roaring Kitty came back and filed his 13G last year. We had these really interesting sort of key moments, right? So we had earnings last year. We got shorted down. We did one of these Oklahoma patterns, I think as I referred to them before. So this is something connected to an offering, the Oklahoma pattern. The sell-off, short, suppression, whatnot. Rate cut, so moved up as a result of this rate cut, then started to get conspicuously moved down starting around the beginning of October. So October 2nd, we started to move down here. Same thing happened this year, although it was on October 3rd, which was the ex-dividend date for the GameStop warrants. We moved down pretty conspicuously. We had a little bit of a reprieve here, but then a double bottom here just before October 25th. Then I think we actually bottomed on the 24th of October. This also happened to be our lowest IV point of the year, with the exception of one moment here in January. We just hit our next lowest IV point of this year at the same time. So a lot of parallels between these two seasons. This resulted in us moving up pretty sharply ahead of October 29th, something maybe like a front run of the expectation of Roaring Kitty tweeting. Then Roaring Kitty released his 13G. We traded up after hours, but then went down, right? We sort of cooled down. We cooled off, hung out in the 22s even here. And then early November, we started to move up at the news of yet another rate cut. November 7th, we got the rate cut. November 8th, we started exploding to the upside. And we really never looked back until Thanksgiving. Very large bullish regression channel all the way up to 32, then adjusted all the way down from Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, so that would be November 29th into December 5th. On December 5th, as the stock moved below $26, Roaring Kitty comes back once again with his Time U cover tweet. We explode up to 31, come all the way back down to 26. Then Ryan Cohen decides to hit him with the Wombo combo, does not do another offering, and we move back up after yet another rate cut decision on December 18th, resulting in this double top formation right around $34. So will we get something like this? I do not know the extent to which we may see this sort of double form pattern here, but I would not be surprised certainly if we see this first move, something like the first couple weeks of November showing a lot of volume. I think recently too, Richard Newton's been talking about this. Beckett Cat has been working with Richard Newton's model, the guy wearing the ducky suit. So he's also looking at something like that for early November into sort of mid-November. A big mark for me, basically what I was looking at, kind of ballparking these things, was saying, okay, well, I would imagine us to resume our move up. I think I mentioned this too, maybe a couple weeks ago, into the institutional filing deadline for quarter 3, which happens to be on November 15th. So I would not be surprised if we move up into the institutional filing deadline on November 15th, and then have something of a correction following that. So on the back half of November, only to then kind of pick back up a little bit more going into quarter 3 earnings report on December 9th. So kind of up early November, get a nice couple week period there into about the 15th or so, the institutional filing deadline, come down for a couple weeks, sort of recover a little bit before earnings in the first week of December, and then have something of another couple week move there, maybe mid-December. But we'll think about December. We'll think about end of the year as we get close to that. Right now, my eye is on this type of move, right? So this type of move coming, especially if we do end up getting that rate cut on Wednesday. So if we take a look at our options data, we will also see that, okay, even though we've got some nice hype going into this week, options right now, the options market going into close on Friday, still not crazy bullish on October 31st. Bets are lots of short calls, 23.5 here, lots of short calls, 24, lots of short calls, 24.50, lots of short calls, 25 at the bid, short calls, short call. These are lots of short calls. So these are positions which have been built on the expectation that we are really not going to move past this kind of nexus of options OI here. I mean, if we get some tweets that move us through this, we're already kind of starting to move down here, going into first couple hours of the day. And though we might kind of recover, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some volatility kind of play around here, especially under 25. That will do a lot, especially earlier in the week, to go ahead and juice up gamma and give traders the opportunity to go ahead and, again, dump more short calls and very highly advantaged trade, especially you've got IV kind of juiced back here again as well. Gamma up as IV is up. These are going to be, these trades, especially in the short term, are going to be back to those premiums we're customarily used to enjoying in GameStop on a regular basis. We take a look at our gamma for this week, right? We can see we've got a big call wall right at $24. That's for this week. Highly suggests we would not finish above that strike on Friday, or not much above that strike. And if we take a look, of course, overall, we see right above 24, we've got $25 as an overall call wall heading into, really heading into November OPEX. So like I said, I think we might see some volatility prior to November OPEX, the 21st, right? November OPEX is coming after the institutional filing deadline. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe early April we blow through that. We kind of juice things up here in the 30s, get up towards 30, test 30 maybe again into that, if we can get into that 27 to 30 range, wouldn't be surprised, especially kind of in this post-swap period. And then I would also not be surprised then coming out of institutional filing deadline to then see us shorted back under $25 ahead of November 21st, November OPEX. So that's kind of my outlook for right now. That's what I'm looking at. That makes sense to me based on what I have seen these institutions do multiple times, right? I'm not giving anybody trade advice. You guys know I take a lot of really conservative approaches, especially when trading derivatives, not telling you to go out and bet on this stuff. Please consider your own risks, right? If you go out and you kind of just do stuff on feel, you're probably going to lose money. I mean, really, in terms of probabilities, that is a statistical certainty. So please be careful out there, not giving any trade advice, right? Not telling anyone to go bet on this information. But that is my outlook going into the end of this week. I would not be surprised to see us stay in the ballpark of 24. We might get a little bit more play above that kind of midweek. I am playing things a little extra cautious because I think what's going on with the Trump tweet, maybe we get something too from, I don't know. Cat Day is a magical season, so I'm always prepared for a little bit of unexpected volatility to show up on the tape. Thinking about that, and then thinking about, I think early November, kind of going into the 15th, there, the kind of 2-week period leading up to that is more or less where I would think that we might have a price adjustment back to the upside. Before then, I think settling back down to a more manageable price level ahead of November OPEX. That's my outlook right there. Thanks very much, as always, for watching and listening. It's going to be great monitoring this and taking a look at this and seeing if, this hypothesis ends up playing out. Good luck out there to everybody, as always, and let's go GME. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.